It's a really important part of our strategy, which is engaging with the teams who are talking to customers. Because I think if you empower them and develop them and put them in a place where they feel growth and they feel like they belong, they're going to deliver a better service to your customers.
Welcome to Talk Time with MaxContact, your go-to podcast for everything contact center related. Join us as we dive into the incredible world of contact centers and explore the latest trends, innovative strategies, and cutting-edge technologies that are reshaping customer interactions. In each episode, we're joined by industry experts to share their practical insights and advice to elevate your contact center performance. Whether you're looking to enhance operational efficiency, improve team management, or understand the impact of AI in contact centers, you're in the right place.
Welcome to another episode of Talk Time with MaxContact. I'm your host, Sean McIver. In today's episode, I'm excited to have Daryl Wilkes, a seasoned leader in customer experience and transformation, joining us. Currently directing customer care at ASOS, Daryl has a distinguished career that spans various high-impact roles in transformation and strategy across multiple industries. His expertise lies in steering customer service operations into new digital frontiers, enhancing customer interactions, and fostering team engagement. Daryl, I always feel a little bit awkward when I'm doing an introduction when you're right here with me. Is that a fair summary? Is there anything you would add?
Thanks, Sean, firstly. And that sounded amazing. I'm not sure you were describing me, but it sounded fantastic. So thank you.
No problem at all. I've been really looking forward to this conversation with you, Daryl. So if you'll forgive me, I'm just going to dive straight in. When we talk about customer experience, customer excellence, when we talk about some of these phrases, some of these, in some cases, KPIs, there can be a huge amount of variance when you talk to different individuals within the industry, as I have found across the many conversations I've had, often with very compelling reasons for that. I'm going to start off by asking you, as you see it, what's the hallmark of excellence when it comes to contact center experience for customers?
Good question. I think there's probably two parts to my answer, Sean. So I think if you take a step back from the contact center experience, i.e. interactions, to me, the hallmark of a service experience is much broader than that. I think you've got to look end to end in your experience. And that's what we try really hard to do within my team. Because actually, the customer almost doesn't want to get in touch with an organization unless something's gone wrong. So actually, if you can orchestrate a really seamless and frictionless experience and pick off those moments where you think a customer's going to go down a happy path and preempt that, that for me is the hallmark of a great service experience. However, customers will always want to get in contact with organizations, will always want support, will always want help. There are always unhappy paths in every customer journey. So for me, the hallmark, I would say, I don't think there's a blueprint which every organization in the world could take and copy and paste and use it and it would work. I think every business is different. And I think what's more important is almost the demographic of customer that you're serving. My personal view is a best-in-class service experience is one that has minimal levels of friction and offers a real strong blend of digital interactions and self-serve, because lots of customers like to do that, don't want to interact with somebody, but that real intelligent help when they need it, but it's help that's really empowered, there's problem solving, and there's really resolution focused, so that actually if I do talk to somebody, I know that I'm not going to have to come back again because this person is fully empowered to resolve my issue and more potentially.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think you've touched on a few things that I'm probably going to cycle back to through the course of this conversation, particularly around what you've said about utilizing various channels and also around it being an element of an overall customer journey. The customer excellence side of things doesn't only come into play when the agent talks to the customer or when the agent interacts with the customer. It's actually earlier than that and later than that. Firstly, though, I think it would be well worth, you touched on it just there, so let's start there. You mentioned about having multiple channels for customers to get in touch. You've got the self-serve, you've got the digital opportunities there as well. Tell me about how you're utilizing technology. Have you integrated anything recently at ASOS that's significantly transformed your customer service operations? And I guess off the back of that, how did you, number one, understand what good looks like and measure a success? And if there are any challenges during that integration?
We've been on a fairly steep transformation curve over the past 2 to 3 years within ASOS customer care. And there's a couple of elements to that really, but they come together quite nicely. One is around the advisor experience. and how we really optimize that. And I'll come back to that in a second. The other part is, as you mentioned it almost, what's the entry point to getting help and care and service for ASOS customers? A couple of years ago, we actually made a really bold decision within the team, probably in the opposite direction to a lot of organizations. So a lot of organizations talk quite prominently about omnichannel. So actually, can we offer different channels? So there's lots of social channels available now, and social media organizations or customer service organizations now, they build platforms around service. We took the bold decision a couple of years back whereby we reduced our channels. So we're a digital native organization. Even 2 to 3 years ago, we had very little telephony interaction with customers. The customer didn't really want to call us, and it wasn't really a channel that we promoted. If you think about our demographic, we target 20-somethings, fashion-loving 20-somethings. They don't really want to pick up a phone and speak to somebody over the phone. But what we did offer was multiple digital channels. So we had live chat, we had Instagram, we had Facebook, we had Twitter, we had email, and there were all these different multiple paths. And what we found, actually, we had really different levels of service across those channels. Live chat was by far and away the most effective in terms of resolving things first time for the customer. We weren't resolving things anywhere near as much as we should have been in terms of the first time resolution. So customers were coming back probably 1 and 2. So resolution, however, it was much better than, for example, if somebody contacted us through direct message on Facebook. So we operate across multiple markets, multiple online stores. So we used a bit of an A/B test and learn method whereby we took one of the smaller markets, we took away channels like social and just left email and live chat. And this test was really enabled us to almost accelerate the strategy. All the customers who were going to social all went to live chat. None of them went to email, which kind of told us they want an interaction there and then, and they want a resolution there, and then they don't want to wait, because anybody who sends an email know that you're waiting at least 24 hours for a response from any organization. We then rapidly rolled out a very similar strategy. We turned off email. So we moved to a single channel, live chat only. Email became almost a business continuity. And then we rolled that same strategy out across multiple markets and geographies, which gives us the strategy we've got today. We also combine that with embracing more digital interactions. So it kind of shocked me when I joined ASOS 3.5 years ago that we didn't have any real digital interactions as part of our service model. Everything was human to human when the customers got in touch. So we very rapidly engaged with a technology organization that's now actually part of Microsoft to implement virtual assistants across all of our major markets. And that fits really well with a live chat channel strategy, because virtual assistants and live chat fit really nicely together as an interaction flow for the customer. And what those virtual assistants are enabled to do is really move a lot of the simple interactions where there's quite a binary response for the customer into a digital interaction. Yes, that's been really cost effective for us. And over a third of our interactions are now handled digitally through those virtual assistants. But what we also did as part of that is redesigned the journey to help. So it was quite a clunky way for a customer to get from, I'm on the buying page, I'm on the app, to get to an actual interaction with an advisor. It was nearly 20 clicks. We pretty much half those clicks by implementing the virtual assistant. So really simplified the journey, took friction out of the journey. And actually the virtual assistant interaction was, again, created less friction for the customer because it gave them the response pretty much straight away. And that's the channel strategy we have today. Jumping back to the advisor experience, what we've then done over the past 12 months is replaced our live chat tool, i.e. the tool that the advisors use with the customers to interact over live chat, to complement the virtual assistant interaction. So they now appear in a single window for the customer, and the advisor is in essence in the same platform as our virtual contact center interactions. So that's worked a lot better. And again, has taken more friction away for the customer. Alongside that, we've replaced quite an old knowledge management flow system that we had with a much more Google type interaction knowledge tool, whereby as an advisor, I can basically search what I need, I can bring it up, and I can respond to the customer much quicker and with better information, much more structured information. So there's quite a lot of transformation that we've implemented over the past 2 to 3 years. It's delivered a huge amount of benefit to us in terms of reducing the overall cost to serve for the organization, but we're delivering better experience through things like touchpoint NPS than we've ever done at the same time. So really positive results from quite a lot of transformation.
That sounds amazing, and especially to go through such a significant transformation in a relatively short space of time. I mean, one of the timeframes that you've just mentioned was in the last 12 months, still going on that transformative journey. And you talked about reducing the friction points from a customer point of view. Can I just check or touch on as well, how did you navigate that from an internal staff on the front lines point of view? How did you navigate those friction points in terms of resistance within the teams themselves? Because that's quite a lot of change. And we know from studies that generally speaking, people can be resistant to change. How did you effectively manage that and take your staff on that journey with you?
Very good question. I think it's probably quite a multifaceted answer. So I think the initial bit is everything we were doing was clearly articulated as part of customer care strategy that we designed as a leadership team. That underpinned our overarching ASOS strategy. Part of our ASOS strategy is to strengthen our relationships with customers. We are the only people in the organization who talk to customers. We don't have stores. We're the only people in the business. That is unbelievably powerful. It's a statement I make every time I talk to the teams. There's so much power in that. By defining a very clear customer care strategy in the direction of travel, which was digital first. We want to be a digital first customer care operation, and we want to leverage technology to enable us to give us really simple, friction-free experience to customers. When they do talk to us, we want to empower you as frontline teams to really resolve for the customer first time, because actually that makes the customer's life easier, but it's a hell of a lot easier and better for you and more empowering for you and probably more fulfilling for you as an advisor at the same time. So I think that's setting out a very clear strategy and constantly repeating that strategy with the team. So we hold what we call monthly strategy cascades with our teams in face-to-face with our in-house team in Watford, but we also do virtual sessions with our outsourced partners over the globe. So every month religiously we'll go through a reminder of our strategy. Here's some progress that we've made against some of the strategic pillars that we've got. Here's some intel from the business. So we'll often bring in speakers from the wider organization just to build up that level of intel around where the business is going, what we're doing from a product perspective, what we're doing from a digital product perspective, but really immersing those frontline teams in the business, but constantly linking them back to here's the strategy, here's the direction, here's the vision, here's your role in that. And linked to that as part of those cascades, which is a really important part, is recognition. So we do reward and recognition every month as part of those sessions. But again, link that recognition back to the strategy. A good example is that we rolled out a training program called Connect, which is all about building the empathy in the interactions that we have, in particular because we're not telephony. So it's slightly more challenging to pick up on tone and apply a level of empathy through an interaction over live chat. So it's something we really dialed up on, invested in. Every month we now have Connect champions. So those people who've really demonstrated the Connect behaviours that were instilled in the operation and really showed that they're delivering against the strategy and doing the right thing for the customer. So that's a really good way of almost cementing the strategy, but also demonstrating to the masses that it's achievable, guys. Look at what this person's done here to deliver against that strategy. So it's a really important part of our strategy, which is engaging with the teams who are talking to customers. Because I think if you empower them and develop them and put them in a place where they feel growth and they feel like they belong, they're going to deliver a better service to your customers.
And just to check in and almost reinforce what you're saying, because it makes perfect sense to me, over the period of time that you've been going on this transformation journey, have you seen those processes have a direct impact on your customer experience measures? How has making these changes transformed your customer experience measures?
100%, yeah. So if I'm an advisor on the front line, I've got two real core metrics that I'm obsessed with. And I know it's the debate, should you constantly talk about KPIs and metrics? They're important in organizations. Those two are customer resolution rate. How often do I resolve and the customer doesn't come back within the following 7 days, which is kind of industry standard measure, and touchpoint net promoter score. So when the customer leaves our interaction, how likely are they to recommend ASOS based on my interaction with you, Sean, as an advisor? Those metrics have improved substantially. Touchpoint NPS, I'd say over the 3-year transformation is for plus 50 points. Over the past 12 months, just over 10 points. So again, really solid, strong movement based on the things that we're doing. Again, resolution rate, we've seen probably 30 to 40% improvement over the 2 to 3 year transfer that we've delivered.
That's incredible. And for those who will be listening, like, those are not small numbers. Those are really significant, substantial numbers and speak volumes to that journey that you've been going on. I think it also speaks to the fact within organizations, when there is a North Star and it's clearly communicated and everyone's pulling in the same direction towards that North Star, and those milestones along that journey are celebrated, as you've described with your cascades and so on, that all helps to kind of move the machine, so to speak. I think that sounds incredible. And it ties into my next question, which is around, you touched on it previously, whereby you had multiple channels. And one of the things that I've spoken to a number of people about quite recently, in fact, is around this principle that we expect more and more of our staff in terms of we automate away some of the simple things. We introduce self-serve. That means that those queries that do come through are that much more complicated. We overlap on top of that the fact that we've got systems that maybe multiple systems that are involved. How do you balance the need for that technical proficiency with maintaining the high morale that you need to have and the job satisfaction you need to have in order to deliver exceptional customer experience and customer excellence within your teams?
It's not easy, and it's a never-ending process, really. So I've just described quite a lot of change that we've made in our systems and our processes and our advisor experience. It's still, in my view, and if one of our advisors sat here with me today, they'd probably say to you, it's still pretty clunky. So because if I've got this type of query, I've got to go into this portal here. If I've got this query, I've got to go into this system here, which is kind of a back office in an old system. They still have to do these things. So I'm pretty pragmatic and realistic that there's probably another stage to our transformation, which brings some of these things together and simplifies it for the advisors. I think your point is spot on. So I've got to deal with all of that. Oh, and by the way, all the really simple stuff, which actually probably gave me a little bit of respite through the day, that the bots are taking that stuff now. The virtual assistants are handling that rightly. The guys completely understand that as part of the strategy. How do you empower the frontline teams more? Actually, you kind of invest in their development and growth. So we just embarked on a really close relationship with an organization called The Forum. So they provide their deep contact center expertise and, I suppose, industry body. They provide, in essence, a suite of learning pathways for people across customer operations and customer service organizations. And we work very closely with our in-house L&D team, and ASOS does a huge amount as a business to enable people to grow and develop in different directions. Some of that retail orientated, some of that generic. What we didn't have as a business is a real true deep contact center development path. So we work with our learning team, we've partnered with the forum to bring to the fore to the frontline team to say, we understand that your role's getting more complex, but so actually let us help you develop in those areas that you think you need to develop in. What that also does is creates one of the biggest challenges with any contact center is attrition and not being able to give people the opportunities to develop. So it creates development paths without potentially there being a job for them to step into, because I think people are realistic. They don't understand that every time I want to develop, the job's there for me. Maybe I've got to develop some skills first, maybe learn some new skills that I didn't have before. And I think just by the partnership we've invested in with the forum, it really gives us a platform for our teams to be able to plug and play a little bit. I want to learn more about planning. I want to learn more about journey design. I want to learn more about analytics, whatever it might be. So for me, that's a huge opportunity. That's very much our in-house team. So the thing we also have to be really cognizant of is we have quite a significant offshore outsourced presence with our partners. Key part of our strategy is having those partnerships in place, and they take the majority or high proportion of our frontline interactions with customers. How do you then overlay that ethos and mindset with those teams? We work very closely with our partners to almost do a very similar thing within our partner estate. So myself and the team are regularly out on site with the teams. We do from town halls to strategy cascades. We take team members from our in-house team out there to spend time doing coaching, learning, training sessions with them, including the learning team. So there's a bit of a journey that we're on in recognition of your job's getting harder, guys. We understand that. We know we're handling some of the tools. We made this tool better. We're giving this tool, which is better. We know there's more to do with some of the complexity of some of these types of queries and tools. But actually, you as an individual, how do we help you grow? And when we launched the Connects program that I referenced earlier, which, yes, was about how do you maximize every interaction through improved empathy, Connect also gave the frontline teams a set of behaviors and principles that are almost life skills. And some of the feedback we had from our advisors out in India and Manila was actually, this training's been fantastic for me to do my job, but actually, as a person, it's given me personal growth. It was so endearing to hear that from the teams. yes, it feels like we're doing the right thing. So I think you have to invest in those frontline teams. Every business is different and every business will do that slightly differently. But that's how we've done that. And we believe we're getting the value both in terms of output, so the customer results we're seeing and the TNPS that I mentioned earlier. We are also seeing, as an example, attrition stabilize and fall across those centres, where we operate in very highly competitive environments in offshore locations where attrition is relatively high because there's always competition in the regions that the guys operate in. We are seeing decline in attrition because people are starting to feel that level of belonging with ASOS.
Hope you're enjoying the conversation so far. If you're finding it valuable, we've got something special for you. Check out our latest industry report, a free resource filled with data-driven insights directly from the contact center landscape, created for contact center leaders looking to stay ahead of the curve. Find out more information via the link in this episode's resources.
That's amazing. And it sounds like it's been a really empowering journey for a lot of the staff to feel engaged in that process and to be on that journey. And a couple of things I want to touch on, if that's okay. You mentioned two metrics previously, that was resolution rate and touchpoint NPS or TNPS, as being important to your measures for success. Now, you and I and our listeners know there are a whole raft of different KPIs that agents can be measured on. I've worked for businesses previously where I had 10 different KPIs. I just want to ask, from your point of view, how has that evolved over your period of time with ASOS to where it is now? How did you, quote unquote, land on those metrics as being ones that really were the ones to focus on?
Let me start with TNPS because that's very industry standard. And the principle for me in running a contact center or leading any sort of transformation is measure something that you can benchmark. Because actually, if you create a measure all by your own, it might be brilliant and really calculated in a really cool scientific way. How do you know whether that's good, bad, or indifferent? But actually, if you measure something that you know the rest of the industry is using, you can go and speak to peers from other organizations to understand where you are. Actually, it's very easy for you then to benchmark yourself and understand how the progress you're making. So I think that's an important point. When I joined ASOS a few years back, we asked customers to fill in a satisfaction survey after an interaction. But we asked them, I think it was the best part of 10 questions. And these questions were framed around almost how we measured quality with our advisors. I think there was some logic in the way it was being done to almost create a set of feedback from the customer that directly related to how we were measuring the advisor's interaction and their ability to tick the boxes that they needed to tick. But A, we saw a relatively low response rate because guess what? Not many customers want to answer 10 questions. But B, they were answering a CSAT question. How satisfied are you out of 5? Guess what? The score was about 3 point something. Doesn't tell you anything. So I'd previously worked very closely with TNPS as a measure in previous organizations. And it was something that people could hang on to, create a hook, become a little bit obsessed with in a good way, i.e. the outcomes for the customer. So it was quite a simple thing to say, actually, guys, let's move to TNPS as a core KPI, because moving away from CSAT to TNPS straight away, you've got this real proxy of detractors, promoters, passes sitting in the middle. Actually, what's making these guys a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? What's really frustrating them? And that really allowed us to start to get a thematic around the things we went after around process and policy change, because we could see the things that were really frustrating customers. We weren't getting that from a CSAT survey. TNPS really brought that to life. So that was almost a very easy decision, but we had to execute it properly. The survey went from 10 questions to 2 questions with verbatim. So how likely to recommend? How easy was it to get your issue resolved? So customer effort. We don't really use the customer effort measure from our advisor interactions. However, we use customer effort in our virtual assistant interactions. So that's our core experience measure through our virtual assistant interactions. So that's the other measure. And we also measure resolution rate within our virtual assistants as well, based on exactly the same methodology. Does the customer come back within 7 days following the interaction? And the resolution rate, I think, is a key KPI in any contact center because I suppose it measures your effectiveness of resolving the thing the customer's got in contact with you on. And I think if you've got, which we have, around just less than a third of contacts where a customer comes back in 7 days' time, that for me, that's the opportunity. That's the space where we say, there's clearly friction. There's clearly something that we're not getting right, either in the upfront experience or in the interactions that we're having. Let's get after that. So we're constantly running resolution programs to get under the skin of what those things are. So yes, it's about the metrics and the measures and giving people something to go after. So we set targets with our partners, we set targets for our in-house team, we set ambitious goals as a leadership team. Where do we want to be in the next financial year? What's our next kind of aspiration for TMPS? But underneath that, how do you improve the experience of the customer? These metrics and the data that sits within it really enables you to do that. And that's why they're the key metrics.
Incredible. And one of the things that's really lit up a light bulb in my head when you were talking there particularly is using the customer experience lens on the survey questions themselves, applying those customer experience principles to all touch points and looking at that survey and going, that's 10 questions, that's too much, and it's not giving us the information we need. And being able to recognize that and say, actually, from a customer point of view, this is a really disengaging part of the journey. Let's change this up. The other point that I just want to make is throughout the course of this conversation, and I think this is something that people can absolutely take away from this conversation as well, is it's almost, and forgive me if I put words in your mouth here, but it's almost like we're having a conversation around the science of CX. And what I mean by that is we're talking around experimentation and A/B testing and making small changes and viewing how those small changes then are reacted to by customers, how they engage with those small changes and what that does to those key central metrics. I want to hand that back over to you, but I appreciate that's not necessarily a question, but I do want to put to you that it feels very scientific in the way that you're approaching this and the way that you're tweaking these various levers that you have at your disposal.
Definitely, and certainly no scientist. I've got a team of some very clever people. We are very data-led in what we do and how we do it, and actually that's come across in how I've described the transformation. Probably another good example to give you on that, Sean, actually just maybe to bring that to life is over the past couple of years, we've really matured our digital care operation. So our virtual assistants take more contact than our advisors now in reality because they're the front door. So they take a lot of that initial contact, and we have a very mature digital operation and we have a very product mindset now. So we view our help journey as a digital product, and we're constantly asking ourselves, what does a great product look like? And that makes us almost go back to the drawing board. The interactions look like this. What about if they look like this? We run pretty mature agile sprints. We have a squad lead who keeps everybody on point. We're delivering every fortnight between 50 and 70 story points in our digital help journey. So that's analyzing the interactions we're having, analyzing those interactions where we contain the customer in a digital interaction, we give them a resolution, and we get a positive customer effort score. On the flip side of that, you've got the customers where we don't contain very well. They're constantly going through to an advisor, customer effort scores low, or the TMPS off the back of the advisor interaction is low. Let's get under the skin of that, because actually some of those are still quite binary, simple journeys that we can digitize. It's almost the more you interact with the customer, the more the VAs interact with the customer, the more they mature and the more we teach them and they learn, the more actually you can evolve the journey and make it even more personalized. And we work really closely with our tech teams as well. The reason we're seeing such success in our virtual assistants and the way they contain interactions and resolve stuff for the customer is because we've introduced APIs. So we can really personalize the interaction. So if you logged in through the virtual assistant, if you've got a query about a delivery, we'll bring a carousel up. Which order is it you're talking about? It's this order. So it's a really personalized interaction. Those are the things that we've only done through putting the VA virtual assistants out there, testing the journeys, and having a team of people who are our virtual contact center operations team, interrogating those interactions and constantly, we call it optimization, constantly optimizing those journeys to make it less friction for the customer, better outcome for ASOS. So it's a really iterative process. It's not a program in it anymore. It's a virtual operation with a real mature sprint rhythm.
I think you've touched on a really important point there, and it's something that I'm going to make the point on. This isn't a question. You can relax for a second. But I think from, again, coming at this from my experience in history, you've touched on something really important there, and that's when embracing these new technologies, it's critically important to have humans in the loop. You talked about your virtual assistants. It's not just plug it in, set it up and leave it alone. You need to have mechanisms by which you're monitoring, tweaking, making improvements to those. And from what you've just described, that's kind of almost perfect scenario. You've got a team dedicated, examining the outputs, looking at where needs the greatest focus, I'm aware of time, so I'm going to make this my last question. I'm going to ask directly about AI. I'm going to ask a more general question because it sounds like you're really kind of on an established journey there. But zooming out from the landscape we're in right now and kind of taking a 50,000 foot view, as you look ahead, what do you see as being the next big innovations incoming in the customer experience landscape that you think will redefine how businesses such as ASOS interact with their customers? And how are you preparing your team to adapt to those and adopt those innovations?
I think probably hard to answer that question without mentioning AI in reality, because I think that's the obvious thing that everybody firstly needs to almost understand. I think that's probably the very important first step. And there's a lot of talk at the moment. There's probably quite a lot of lack of understanding. And I'd say that personally as well. It's something that I need to spend more time understanding. Do I think it's transformative from a service operations, care, contact center perspective? Hugely. So if I just take what we've done in the past 6-12 months where we've implemented a brand new knowledge tool. So we've taken very old school kind of flow charts our advisors used to use, put them into a tool that's much more browser based. We now have the basis through which capability like large language models and Copilot capability, in essence, can scrape that information and present it to an advisor. That for me is the really obvious opportunity from a customer service operation point of view. The key thing is how you do that. It's almost less about should we embrace the technology? Yes, of course we should. It's the how, it's the implementation, it's how you make that transformation happen and do it in the right way, which is, I think, is critical for us, which is why we're not rushing into any of that stuff. We have Copilot across the business now. So we've got a platinum partnership with Microsoft. So from an ASOS, I've got Copilot sat on my laptop. I use it to summarize Teams chats that I've missed throughout the day and a few other things, meetings that I've missed, and go back to the transcript. So really useful capability. I'm probably tapping into 0.001% of that opportunity. So I think I'm interested to see where different organizations go with Gen I as a capability from a contact center point of view. For me, it's a massive enabler to much more personalized and rich interactions, both digital interactions and human interactions. I think there's a desire for people to interact with organizations, and no business has got all their processes nailed on. Therefore, there will always be a need for interactions to happen. Can you optimize and personalize those interactions and make them really curated and a better experience? Yeah, I think there's a massive opportunity for AI in that space.
I've been involved with an AI project over a period of time. Everything that you're saying speaks almost perfectly to what I would agree with and how I would frame it myself as well. I do just want to take a moment and say thank you ever so much. It's been such an interesting conversation. And one of my takeaways that I kind of would reiterate to our listeners is that whole science of CX. And I think that's something that you've embodied and described really elegantly and eloquently today on this conversation throughout. And I think that's kind of one of the things I'm taking away from this conversation. So huge thank you, Daryl Wilkes from ASOS. And I look forward to seeing where things go from here for yourselves.
Really enjoyed your show, actually. So thanks for inviting me on. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Talk Time with MaxContact. We hope today's discussion has sparked new ideas to help you advance in your contact center. To learn more about any of the topics discussed in this episode, visit www.maxcontact.com. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to leave us a rating on your favorite streaming platform to help other like-minded individuals join the conversation. Also, stay tuned for our upcoming listener questions segment. We'd love for you to participate and share your thoughts. And remember to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications to never miss a future episode. On behalf of everyone at MaxContact, thanks for listening.